Welcome to the Oneness in the 12 Spheres of Life panel. Thank you all for being here, all of the people who are listening by phone and coming in by internet. We've been so looking forward to this panel with our guests, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Craig Hamilton, Anna Marie Pieterse, and Claire Zammit, who will be talking about a world based on oneness and specifically about what each sphere of life looks like in this world that is emerging. So I'd like to get started right away, and the way that I can do that is to introduce the wonderful folks, the friends who are here with me. I'll start with my longtime friend and actually next-door neighbor, Barbara Marx Hubbard, who is the president of the Foundation for Conscious Evolution, pioneer of conscious evolution, an author, speaker, social innovator. These bios don't really do justice, but she's a world-renowned visionary futurist, an evolutionary educator, and inspiring speaker. She's the author of 7 books that communicate the new worldview of conscious evolution. She is co-founder and chair of the Foundation for Conscious Evolution and additionally co-founded many progressive organizations, including the Association for Global New Thought, as well as the World Future Society. I think almost everyone knows that in 1984 her name was placed in nomination for the vice presidency of the U.S. on the Democratic ticket. And her campaign theme then, in 1984, was to fulfill the dream, a campaign for a positive future, which we're creating now. She is currently co-producing with the Shift Network a global multimedia event and many classes, and is attempting to unify many people, millions of people around the world, with her new evolve.org website, which she'll talk about in a minute. Hello, Barbara Marx Hubbard. Would you just like to say a few words of welcome?
Well, Barbara Fields and my very favorite evolutionary leaders, Claire and Craig, I'm honored to be on this. I'm really touched in my heart with how much goodness and wisdom is arising in the world, and how wonderful it is that our nervous system, the Internet, is able to communicate this globally. So I'm just taking a moment to think of the hundreds of thousands of people around the world who are experiencing this together right now as one.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I could almost go next
You're
door
welcome.
and we could do this together. Our second participant from Humanities team is Anna Marie Pieterse, born in Johannesburg. She is the coordinator for Humanities Team South Africa. She grew up during the apartheid years, exposed to matters of separation that played a big role in her lifelong inquiry into matters of the self and of the other. Since 2005, she has participated in Humanities Team as the leader responsible for the launch and establishment of the Global Oneness Declaration, the Global Oneness Day Initiative, and the 2009 Spiritual Leadership Award for Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Anna Marie currently co-leads the development and launch of the Oneness in 12 Spheres of Life program. Anna Marie, why don't you just say a few words and welcome yourself to our audience?
Thank you so much, Barbara. First of all, happy Global Oneness Day to everyone on the call and all of those listeners from all over the world. It is a great honor for me to be here. It's really a humble honor for me to be here on this call together with all these fabulous panel members. And I'm looking forward to a wonderful discussion with all of you. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Anna Marie. Claire Zammit is the co-creator of the Feminine Power Courses for Women and co-leads a thriving learning community of hundreds of thousands of women throughout the world. She is a specialist in transformative education and delivers leading-edge programs for lasting change. Claire is currently completing her doctorate in the field of transformative learning and change at the California Institute of Integral Studies, researching the transformations of women in her Feminine Power Mastery program. Claire is co-author of the forthcoming book, Feminine Power, Awakening to the Creative Force of Life, and co-creator and host of the internationally acclaimed Women on the Edge of Evolution teleseries. Hey, Claire, welcome today.
Hey, Barbara, it's so great to be here with you and Barbara and Anna Marie and, of course, my husband, Craig. Really honored to be here in this circle and diving into our conversation. Thank you.
Great. And yes, your husband, Craig Hamilton, founder of Integral Enlightenment and pioneer in the emerging field of evolutionary spirituality. Craig's work articulates the vital relationship between individual and collective evolution and provides practical spiritual training and tools to facilitate it. As the guiding force behind Integral Enlightenment, Craig offers guidance to a growing international community of students in 50 countries around the world. His online academy for, sorry, my voice is going out here.
What?
Craig, do me a favor and introduce yourself.
I don't know. What should I say there? I think she was about to say that I teach this online programs through my Academy for Evolutionaries around the world. I don't have my bio in front of me. But,
no, that's true.
I would just like to just say hi, everybody. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be part of Global Oneness Day and to be here to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is unity, and in particular, what's exciting to me about the fact that you're spending a whole day on this is talking about the practical implications of oneness, because oneness is an idea that often, makes us feel warm and fuzzy and connected, as it should, but oneness has enormous implications for our lives when we begin to turn and sharpen the lens and look more closely. It has profound implications for how we come together and for how we address every aspect of life, and I'm happy to be here on this panel talking about that with all of you. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Craig. Actually, you just exemplified what we've been talking about all morning, that who you are and what you believe and think and bring to the world, it's a lot more impressive than reading a bio on the recording. So I appreciate who you are, and I've known you for quite a few years now, and I've always really admired and respected your work. So let's move forward and hear from everyone. I think the best way to begin the panel, which is the 12 spheres of life, is to ask Anna Marie if she would just take a few minutes and give us an overview of the purpose and themes of oneness in the 12 spheres of life. Anna Marie?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Barbara. As we all know, we are all one is the core principle of Humanity's team that I have been involved with since 2005. In 2008, during our Global Council meeting in Portugal, we firmly redeclared our desire to play a real serious role in the awakening of the world to oneness. As a result, the Global Oneness Declaration that has been signed by more than 86,000 people to date was launched in 2009, and we held our first Global Oneness Day in the year 2010. Now, during our meeting in 2008, we also expressed our desire that one day we want to play a role in the grounding of this sacred reality in all spheres of life. We said that in the end, we wanted to play a role in the conscious creation of thriving systems and communities and to co-create a world that is reflective of our oneness. Now, at this time, we already knew about Barbara Marx Hubbard's 12 spheres model and a wheel of co-creation, and we often referred to it during the following years, and we started using it in all kinds of general ways since then. But then about 2 years ago, with our Oneness Declaration, the Global Oneness Day, and our inner work and spiritual activism programs well established, we felt naturally drawn to now have another good look at this whole initiative, this whole idea of oneness in 12 spheres of life, conscious evolution, and the wheel of co-creation. And I must say, it took us a full year with lots of grappling with this whole concept, to birth this whole concept as it is seen on our global website today. Now, throughout the development process, it was very important for us to keep in mind the wording of our Oneness Declaration, our mission and vision statements, our 5 steps to peace that deals with openness and integration and living one's highest beliefs, our statement of cultural diversity, and our awesome oneness statement. And we also wanted to ensure that the initiative is a tool for self-reflection and personal transformation, as well as for spiritual activism and conscious community building. So it's this whole inner-outer focus. And because we believe that it is our incomplete views and beliefs about ourselves and God, life, and one another that lie at the core of all of our predicaments, As with all of our programs, we wanted this initiative also to be a tool for closing the gap between who we think we are and who we really are, and between where we are and where we want to go to. We wanted to combine all of this with the fabulous work and wisdom of Barbara Marx Hubbard. And we were also drawn to take into consideration the integral approach of Ken Wilber. And we were also inspired then by the program. The Thrive movement was also quite in the fore at that time. So it was this whole concept of life as a process that we were drawn to. And I personally had a deep desire to see this whole wheel and spiral as a template of our cosmic connection. Like organs of our human bodies have different energies that serve a specific purpose for the well-being of the whole. You know, I can see that we as human beings also serve a specific purpose, and the systems that we create to govern our lives are a reflection of our inner systems and organs. So when people go to our global website today, they will find a complete summary of the research that we did to launch this Oneness in 12 Spheres of Life initiative and what this is all based upon. And they will find images and links to the 12 different spheres and descriptions that are arranged in alphabetical order. Now, what I see developing out of this whole model is the opportunity that it provides for us to form our own vision for our own lives in the world through the different spheres. I really think that this is most essential. So instead of looking at a broken world, I think this whole, the 12 spheres and the wheel of co-creation gives us the opportunity to dream specifically about how we want to be. We are consciously co-dreaming a new world. We are co-writing a new cultural story for all of our systems and for our world. And this is what we as Humanities team have tried within each of these spheres, albeit humbling beginnings. As we evolve, I can see that so will our descriptions also become ever more brilliant. But as they are, however, right at this moment, I really think that these descriptions do provide good food for thought. So for now, once a week, we are posting something about the 12 spheres for the month on our global Facebook page with the idea to get the Oneness in 12 Spheres of Life idea more into mainstream thinking and discussion. So more and more people have the opportunity to form their own vision for the different spheres. And I must say, so far the response has really been tremendous. The one that I posted on Monday, for example, on the sphere of relationship, was seen by 6,000 people already, and I think we had 100 likes and 100 shares, so that's really phenomenal. So we're making it possible for people to start grappling and thinking about these spheres. Going forward, we will be finding ways to play a more tangible role in the conscious creation of healthy and thriving communities on the ground. And when we do so, we will be taking all of the great resources and wisdom that is out there at the time into consideration. But already as it is, what we have all co-created is a fantastic thing, to say the least. And that is how I would like to start this conversation. Thank you so much, Barbara.
Thank you, Anna Marie. Now I'd really love to hear from Barbara Marx Hubbard, who, as we know, her wheel of co-creation has been a meme in our community for many, many years now. And she's going to tell you more about that and what's up with Evolve.org, just to give us a little more commentary on the vision and the process and the nuances of creating oneness in the 12, what she calls sectors, but in this case, spheres of life. You know, it takes some unpacking to get to oneness when you're actually thinking about a complex society such as ours. So this now from Barbara Marx Hubbard becomes a kind of a call to action, and she'd like to tell us a little bit more about that now.
Well,
Barbara?
Thank you, Barbara and Anna Marie. I was so thrilled when I was with Humanities team and learned of your work and the brilliance that you've shown in identifying the meaning of every sector. And I'd like to briefly tell you how this vision came to me in terms of global oneness and what we can actually do with it. It really came from a spiritual experience in which I felt the pain of this earth as a whole. And then when the pain was deep enough, suddenly there was the spread of empathy, which is love or oneness, was coursing through the planet, which is what's happening now, right now on Global Oneness Day. And when anyone's in pain anywhere in the world now, we all feel it. And then I felt the spirituality grow in the world, where whatever we call God, as Neil says, came inside each person in their own language, in their own image. And it was like a planetary Pentecost where we were all hearing it from within in our own way. And then it kept on moving, and I caught up to the great new capacities of humanity in health, education, economics, new energy systems, and I had an experience of them being coordinated as a living system, as one planetary body, with all its separate capabilities coming together as in a living planetary body. And that was the birth of the wheel of co-creation, because what I saw was that we are living, although oneness is within us, all of our external structures are top-down pyramids that separate us from each other, whether it be nation state or various organized religions or global corporations, or even the structure of universities with all courses in separate sectors. And I had the impulse to create a new social vision of our planet as one living organism, with every sector of the wheel, or sphere of life, as Anna Marie calls it, being the emerging potential in that field, and the emerging projects that are actually evolving that field. And I could see that very quickly we could see the emerging world in our midst because we're here. But the news and the way we see the separate sectors prevents us from seeing not only the inner oneness, but the emerging oneness of every capability we have as one planetary body. Then I also saw at the hub of the wheel, or at the hub of the 12 spheres of life, is a shared spirituality. It's what Craig is calling evolutionary spirituality. It's the resonance that we feel because we are expression of the billions of years of the divine process of creation manifesting in our own internal yearning to express and be who we are. So as we go into the hub of the wheel, we get aroused to our own vocation, to our own callings, to our own essential self, and we go out into the world, into those spheres of life, to create our own projects, our own visions, our own work, while always seeing that whatever unique thing anyone is doing, they're part of the whole system. They're part of the planetary body. You could call this holistic planetary health vision, as we have a holistic vision now of our own physical body. And I'll just end this by saying that we are now creating on our website, evolve.org, a way for everyone to put their vision in and place themselves in whatever sector of the wheel they want to be in, and find partners to co-create, so that the Global Oneness Day would start at the deepest inner aspect of our oneness and go out into the new social patterns that create a world of amazing creativity, beauty, and goodness. When you see what's already emerging, and imagine unlocking this creativity from the source of spiritual oneness and social creativity, you begin to see the vision of an emerging world so splendid and so great that I would say it equals all spiritual visions of the past come true. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, so much. Good. So we're really unfolding the discussion now by hearing a different perspective from everyone. And the next one that I would like to hear from is Claire. When we were preparing for the call, we talked about how you would be such a good spokesperson for oneness as it relates to the dynamic of feminine power and the importance of knowing this, especially right now. You also are a master about how to build relational ways of being and doing in all the spheres of life to achieve new outcomes through more integrated processes. So, of course, we'd like to hear a lot more about that.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Barbara and Anna Marie. No, I'm just sitting here and just sensing into the power of this conversation. And the work that I do is really focused on the feminine, and there's a lot of conversations right now about the feminine or the divine feminine. And I think a great question is really, what does the feminine have to do with creating this consciousness of oneness in the world? And I think if we look at, I know all of us here are, have a yearning or a sense that we want to help the world evolve. We want to help the world change to reflect the deeper truth of this oneness. And I think how would it happen that the world would change, or what would it look like? I think inherently it would be that there's a shift in how we're relating to each other. I think this comes back to, Craig, what you said at the very beginning about, well, what does oneness look like in practice? We love the idea of oneness, but what would it actually really look like to be living that? And, what I've really discovered is that it's a shift of how we're relating, from a different level of our own consciousness. It's a shift of how we're relating to ourselves, a shift of how we're relating to our relationship to the universe or our higher power, and it's how we're shifting in our relationship with each other. And this is essentially the feminine principle. And so, I think it's the realm of the feminine. We think about the return of the feminine. It's bringing this way of knowing and being that's oriented to relationship that can create a space for a larger wholeness and creativity to flourish. The way of knowing and being and orienting over the last several thousand years in our prevailing Western culture has really been, knowing through separating things out into parts, right? So the sort of masculine power system is like, what can we know and what can we discover through breaking things down into parts and separating them out and looking at them. And you have the miracles of science and the marvels of industry that have emerged inside of this, predominantly masculine knowledge system. And that's been incredible for human evolution. If you look at the innovations in our world and what that knowledge system has created. So I think it's important to not see that as bad or wrong as much as it's insufficient to where we want to go next. And so if we can bring into, the amazing kind of gifts of this masculine system, we can, which has been particularly good for creating those things that are very predictable and controllable, right? So, if you want to get a rocket to go to the moon, this masculine knowledge system of looking at things in separation, breaking them down into parts, there's been so much power in that. But I think, what we're yearning for individually in our lives and in our world, it's not just to organize objects in the external world, it's actually to catalyze higher human development and higher human flourishing. And so, we need to cultivate a different kind of power to do this. And so, this kind of comes into bringing oneness into being a practical thing, is that ways of knowing and being that are oriented relationally kind of like bring into our system in our world an unleashing of the kind of creativity that will drive our own individual and collective potentials forward. So I think, that's kind of like grounding a kind of practical way, thinking from that perspective of wholeness, what we can know and what we can discover now, not just by breaking things out into parts, but looking at the whole, seeing ourselves as related and connected and a part of, on an individual level, connecting to the deepest part of ourselves and beginning to identify with the deepest part of ourselves and relate to ourselves, form a relationship with ourselves as though, the deepest part of you, me, all of us shares the same source, and be relating to ourselves from there, relating to the larger circle of life where our identity expands and we see ourselves as sensing organs of the whole process, and our circle of care expands, and we're relating to others inside that sense of being in our relationship with each other being truly inherent to the context of our existence. And so, there's going to be, I think, for us to be truly living oneness, we need to develop these new ways of relating to ourselves, that are, and each other and life, that are highly relational. And when we do that, and we focus on that, we find we actually have the experience of being interconnected, the lived experience of being interconnected, the lived experience of being one. And in that, what's really significant in terms of the possibility that opens up is not just that we feel good, right? It's we feel great that we're living in a consciousness of oneness. But by shifting our awareness there and being able to create from that consciousness, we're actually catalyzing our own and our collective creativity and power to realize the unmanifest potentials that we're holding. And it's that shift that holds the key.
Beautiful, Claire. And also so expressive of the dynamic of feminine power to see it from this perspective. So next I'd like to hear from Craig, who speaks and works eloquently when it comes to the subjects of coherence and alignment at the deepest level. I know, Craig, that you've said that when alignment is built around spiritual core at the level of the individual, the models of competing values and separation give way to understanding of interdependence and oneness. So I know that you'll be speaking now about how individuals come together in coherence, about the values of the evolved community and the natural field of cooperation and coordination. Please, go forward.
Okay, thank you. Well, and thanks, Claire, for your inspiring call to the power of relatedness there. It's one of the things I really love about your work, and thank you, Barbara and Anne-Marie, for all that context. As I'm just kind of holding all the perspectives that have come in here, what I'm sensing that the essence of this panel is really about is about how do we bring a consciousness of oneness to every aspect of life. You mentioned the 12 spheres, and for those of us who don't know what exactly all 12 spheres are, essentially we're talking about how do we bring it into the world? How do we bring it into all the different domains in which we human beings come together and operate and try to function? And I think in particular, of course, for all of us on a call like this, there's an interest in how we're going to transform the world. How are we going to evolve the structures of our society, the structures of our culture? How are we going to move the dial forward? It's one thing for a bunch of us to come together and feel a sense of unity, but gosh, the world doesn't seem to quite be reflecting that back to us by and large. And I know that one thing, one confusion that I think a lot of us who are wanting to change the world and who sense a higher possibility for humanity, one confusion that I think many of us feel is, well, why doesn't everybody want to come together? Why, I hear it a lot, why don't people see that love is what it's all about? Or why do people still fight each other? Why do people compete in pursuit of short-term self-interest? And there's this kind of sense I'm often hearing in kind of oneness-oriented circles that's kind of like, well, if only we, those of us who are into this oneness stuff, who are, spiritually oriented, if only we could persuade them, all those people who, are obviously still just interested in separation, if only we could get them to get into oneness, then everything would work. So let's just make that shift happen somehow. And I don't know if it's obvious in the way I laid this out, but there's an interesting kind of paradox there, because when we're taking that position, when we're kind of going, there's the anti-oneness people, or the people who are causing all the problems, whether it's the military-industrial complex or corporate greed or whatever we want to say, there's them, and then there's us who really would have a different world if only everybody was like us. Inherent in that, what are we doing? We're creating separation between those of us who are on the oneness side of the equation and those who aren't. And the problem is that we're creating an us and them dynamic, which is inherently problematic from a point of view of oneness, because we're creating separation between these two parts of humanity. But but not only is it, philosophically problematic from a oneness point of view, it's also the real issue is it's taking us away from the real truth of the matter, which is that there's not, if we're really honest and we really look at what makes up the human race, there's not really two different kinds of people. There's not the love and oneness people and the, separation and greed and cruelty people. What there really is there's a part of all of us that wants to come together and connect, and there's a part of all of us that wants to remain separate and defend our territory, whether that's our point of view, our own agenda, our belief system, who we think we are, whatever it is. There's a part of us that's actually deeply committed to separation, even though we may be outwardly taking all kinds of positive actions, trying to bring more unity and connection into the world. And so one thing that I would encourage all of us who want to create a better world to seriously consider is that one of the most meaningful things we can possibly do to really move humanity forward toward a consciousness of oneness is to actually not just keep talking about oneness, but actually turn toward a real reckoning within ourselves around, well, in what ways am I still committed to a paradigm of separation? In what ways am I still, in spite of my passion for oneness and unity and love and spirit, in what ways do I still hold on to a small separate sense of self? Do I still fundamentally, am I more interested in my agenda than in what's really for the greater good in a situation? In what ways am I still, a fundamentally kind of in some us and them dynamic, some dynamic of separation, and how am I really playing into that in my own life? And then not just to look at that, and certainly not to feel bad about ourselves by facing that, but because when we actually make all that conscious, when we make that impulse towards separation conscious in ourselves, then for one thing, we're no longer looking at other people as with confusion as to why they're not more into all this, because we go, oh, I see why. It's this, which I am also participating in, maybe to a lesser degree. But not only that, then we have an opportunity to actually participate in what is potentially, I would say, one of the greatest pieces of work of our time, which is the evolution of human nature. Because, yes, our human nature is very divided currently. We have a part of us that, is all about us and all about defending our own territory on some level. And then we have another part of us, what Abraham Lincoln called the better angels of our nature. We have the emergence of spiritual potential, of virtue, of our higher emergent evolutionary potential that we all can sense is trying to come online. And we have the potential to start to consciously and freely choose which part of our nature we're going to align with, which of these impulses we're going to really express in our lives moment by moment, day by day, even when the going gets tough and when we're up against the wall. And we're going to still be a stand for this impulse toward unity and connection, non-separation. And when we start to do that work of evolving human nature for real in ourselves, we're no longer just, it's not our spiritual life is no longer just for us. We're actually contributing to the evolution of consciousness and culture. We're sending out ripples into the world with all of our actions, not just the big oneness actions, but everything we do is a model for, a person who's no longer defended, a person who's no longer about themselves, a person who's now really fundamentally aligned with the good of the whole as their primary orientation, and in many ways living in the consciousness of relatedness that Claire was speaking about. And so there are, of course, 12 spheres and many things we need to apply all of this to, but at least one domain that I would like to say is front and center and that will ripple out and impact all of those domains is this domain of really evolving human nature for the greater good. So maybe I'll just stop there. Thank you.
No, thank you, Craig. Now we've heard from everyone, and we're getting down to the crux of it. And you're all friends, and I think it would be a nice time to have just some informal, open dialogue among us. And I think I'll kick it off with a question that has come in from the people who are listening on the Internet through Instant Teleseminar. And the person's comment in question is this: I am afraid of an opposite force to this positive oneness growing and gaining a lot of power. It is, and she quotes, the New World Order, who are powerful world leaders. They have no ethics or morals and want to control humanity. Now, there's a good question. What do you think about it?
I think no, sorry, go. Somebody else go.
Well, I that problems are evolutionary drivers, and it's true there are dominant and controlling interests in the world that have built up a certain power. And what is actually happening is that the problems and crises of the world cannot be resolved by the people trying to contain power that way, particularly the environmental crises, all of which is requiring cooperation, coordination, and coming together. So it feels to me like whatever power structures have been holding us in their own self-interest are being really crumbling, as we can see to some degree in the American presidency, where the conflict becomes so virulent that it goes impotent. Meanwhile, the people like us are joining by the millions to connect with each other. So I guess I would say I would not be afraid of that. I would just work to become the change through our own connecting everywhere. And like Craig says, we don't have to make bad and good people as a separation. Just let's continue to connect that which is emergent, and I believe everything will follow from that, because for billions of years nature has been evolving towards higher consciousness and greater freedom and more complex loving order.
Anna Marie, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, you know, what comes to mind for me immediately is this whole thing about vision. This is also something that Barbara Marx Hubbard focuses on so much these days. It's something that, you know, with our initiatives here in South Africa, certainly that we're also beginning to focus on more and more. And that is to focus on what we want. What is it that we see for the world? You know, I know, you know, when I switch on the television, I also get so upset about, you know, what does not work. And I mean, certainly it is so. There are so many things that are not working. But I think, and this is something that I think about Neil Donald Walsh, where he says, instead of trying to go out there and fight the systems that do not work, is to go and create that which we want, which is, and the people will come. I think that is a more flowing, that's a more softer, a more feminine approach. You know, I think what Claire is for example, speaking about.
Well, Claire, maybe you would like to speak, follow on that.
Well, I think that it's, you know, just to pick up on what so many parts of the conversation have been. I think that, you know, however bad the world is, it's evolving in a way that is miraculous. And if you think back to, you know, the evolution of human nature, regardless of what, you know, every example we can look at of the horror of the human condition or the world, there are exponential examples about how, you know, change is really possible. And I think it's easy for us to kind of feel helpless and powerless about the future when we look at, you know, so many of these problems and challenges. But I think that if we take our attention on all of the ways in which the world is changing and evolving, and focus on what steps we can actually take in our own world to, you know, create the future that we want, and that the future really is up to us, and it's not fixed. You know, I think that you know, it seems like these are unsolvable and insurmountable challenges, and I think we can get isolated. You know, if we're not connected, if there's not a field of relatedness and connection, the problems seem even more intense than they are. When we're connected and we're related and we're not alone and we're coming together, there is a way that power and possibility will begin to open up.
Yeah.
I
there's
love
another
that you invoke. Oh, go ahead. Can I just add one little thing?
No, please finish up on that, and then I'll ask the next question.
I just wanted to. I'm glad you brought in kind of the historical or deep time evolutionary perspective to this, because that's kind of where my attention was going with the question too. Because I was thinking, when we look at what the questioner's bringing is something that a lot of us feel, right? We go, gosh, all the power is concentrated in the hands of a few, and they're controlling everything, and how can we create a power that can go up against that kind of global economic power, et cetera. But I was thinking, but you know what? It's a heck of a lot less that way than it's ever been. I mean, imagine what it was like to live in the Middle Ages when actually all the power literally was in the hands of a few. And if you were a common person, so to speak, you had absolutely no power, no chance of ever getting any power or voice. We're now in a world with technology and the internet and everything that's available to us, where we're seeing every day situations where it seems like an all-powerful interest gets basically overthrown by the people because they don't have all the power anymore. And we're just seeing over and over again that actually, in many ways, the power is in the hands of the people. Of course, not completely, and yet everything that the questioner said is also true, and it's not that that's not a dynamic that we're still dealing with as a human species, but we're in the part of the cycle where we're moving toward the true empowerment of the people, even as we still feel up against these dynamics that have been here from the beginning, right? From the beginning, people have been seizing power and using it to dominate other people for their own interests. It's just now we actually are in a place where we could change that. So I'm a vote for putting our attention there and rallying.
Mm-hmm. I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. Just recently we had a wonderful example of that with the recent question mark in Syria, and wondering whether we were going to invade yet another country unnecessarily. And there was such an outcry of conversation on the internet where grassroots people were just voicing the fact that, okay, we've been there, we've done that, we get it, this is a short learning curve, this is not what we want. I really believe that changed the face of the conversation in real time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a voice now. Now, are we willing to take responsibility for it and own it and be empowered? That's a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me as well, sorry. This is Anne-Marie. What comes to mind for me as well, I don't know how many of you know of Paul Hawken. He is the person who wrote the book Blessed Unrest. And I can see in many ways that this is really what is happening. The unrest that we are seeing is really a blessing. I can see that we are pushing ourselves to where we need to go to. He speaks about a global democracy movement that he thought was about to pop. And I think more good is happening maybe than what we care to or that we are able to see on the surface.
Right. Well, that's a perfect lead into a question that just came in from the Internet listeners. Can you ask Barbara Marx Hubbard how she thinks social media will play a role in the wheel of co-creation? And now, part of the problem is that we have been slowly but surely developing our own megaphone in the media, but it's not the mainstream media that we've been used to for years. So here is a whole new ballgame.
I'd like to call us new mainstream, because the
new mainstream. Good.
Yeah. The new mainstream is the mainstream of the direction of life and evolution, which is towards more wholeness, more creativity, more consciousness. And I believe that the planet has grown a new nervous system in the last 10 years with the enormity of the social media, Facebook being the third largest nation in the world. Why is this? It starts out for relationship and for connection, but with one more degree of coherence in our social media, like what we're doing with Anne-Marie and myself and many others, and Paul Hawken, is if you start to put into the social media that which is already working toward a positive future, and I'd like to add the point of human creativity. It's an innate yearning in everybody's heart to express their own potential, their own idea of how they can participate. And through social media, what we're all doing now, and we're doing on evolve.org, is saying if you have a vision, you have an idea, you put it on this internet, and others will join you in whatever sector of the wheel you're interested in, and we can see the emerging world on social media within the next, I think, very quickly. And one last point, somebody said to me, I said, how do you think we can do this quickly enough given the environmental crisis? And this person said, you know, when people get the idea that they're part of the whole and can do something, that happens very quickly. I think it could happen quicker. And you know how quickly the mind can actually shift? And I think Global Oneness Day is a participation in that shift.
You know, we're coming up on, we've got about 12 minutes left, and this is the time when I'd like you all to take some time synthesizing what is the message you'd like to give to this very large audience today, including talking a little bit about your projects and programs and giving some websites and so on. I think that for people to know more about your work would be a very good use of these last 10 minutes or so. Who wants to start? How about you, Craig?
Okay. All right. Let me synthesize all that. No. That's funny. Okay. So, I think the thing that's kind of settling in for me through everything I've been hearing and everything we've been kind of tuning into together is just, it's actually a kind of, it's a very empowering message that I hear coming out of this panel. And to tie back into this theme of relatedness that Claire brought forth and that Barbara was touching on again a few minutes ago, one of the interesting things we're often not that conscious of is the degree to which we all affect each other all the time, whether we see it or not, whether we know it or not. And this is, this is something that has pros and cons to it. But in a sense, human beings, we're fundamentally social creatures. It's how we evolved. And we have a very, in other words, even though we're in a time of individualism, right, and in a culture of individualism and the me generation, and there's been so much emphasis on everybody pursuing their individual fulfillment and living their best life and everything else. The reality is we're much more like what influences us much more than anything that arises from us, from our individual destiny code or some impulse within. What influences us most is actually our relationships with others. It's the people around us. And so, in other words, we're always taking cues from each other about how to be. This is why it's so easy, say if you go on a spiritual retreat or away for a weekend workshop, why it's so easy to get into an elevated state of consciousness, because you're suddenly around all these other people who are doing that too. And it's also why coming off in an event like that and going back to ordinary life and your workplace where people don't share those higher values and aren't aligned at that level, why it's so easy to fall out of that elevated state of consciousness and get back into a very mundane relationship to life, because, again, we're surrounded by other people who are hanging out at a kind of different vibrational level, if you will. So in a sense, that's good news and bad news, but the reason it's really good news that I just want to maybe draw our attention to is it means that any one of us can actually begin having a very big impact on the world right away if we're willing to, in a sense, own that power, own the power we have to influence. And we can look at that kind of influence, amplified through technology now, right? You can tweet, you can Facebook, you can get the word out, you have a voice, you can put videos on YouTube. We all have a platform now, but I'm saying even independent of any media platform or outreach, just in the person we choose to be and the power we choose to hold and the way we choose, our willingness to be a stand for something that's not in line with the status quo, but to be a stand for the new possibility in every moment of our life, we are sending a message. We're a billboard for how to be. And people will cue off of us. They will follow. And so in a sense what I'm calling us all to is our own evolutionary leadership potential. To whatever degree we're in touch with the way things could be and should be, live that fully and watch what happens and you know, watch how much impact you begin to have. So I think that's my closing message. If you want me to say about how to find out more about my work, I would say go to evolutionaryself.com. It's a web page where you can download a free audio where I introduce my whole integral enlightenment approach to life. So evolutionaryself.com. And maybe I'll just leave it there. Thank you for having me.
Fantastic, Craig. Thank you. Claire, how about you telling us a little bit more about where we can learn more about your work?
Oh, thanks, Barbara. And I was actually wanting to share next because, Craig, you said so many of the things that I wanted to say in wrapping up, which is awesome. And if I can just kind of piggyback off that, you know, I think it's really true, and I think it comes back to so many of the points that you mentioned about how this is something that Marianne Williamson really said at her Sister Giant event last year, where she was really wanting to catalyze a movement of women running for political office and having leverage. She said, we need to change the conversation from how do we get more power to what are we going to do with the power that we have. And, that obviously, that sentiment is obviously what has inspired her running for Congress. She just feels like she's just a citizen participating in democracy. And I think in some way, whatever way we're called to participate, it's to, I think, be in this consciousness that, we are so related and so connected through technology, through social media, through the social internet, that never before has an individual had so much power to influence and shape the future. It's really unprecedented in human history how many of us actually have leverage to be able to influence. And I mean, there are so many statistics that, we hear Marianne's side all the time about how, it just takes 6 letters on an issue to a representative of Congress to have people shift their position. I was at the Results Conference with her a couple of years ago, where they were a group where they teach citizens how to lobby their elected officials to get funding allocated in government to things like global education, like the environment, the issues that so many of us on this call really care about. And then at the end of the workshop, they go up and they lobby their Congress people, and as a result of that, hundreds of millions of dollars in funding get created. And I've seen this really up close and personal, that we really have so much power, and in saying yes to stepping into this is our world, this is my world, that I am so powerful that I have a voice, and I actually get to say what happens here. For us to actually step into a shift of identity, of seeing ourselves as being, as what Craig is saying, as being leaders, as actually having leverage and having power. And then what's most important in terms of what we bring to that, it's not just any kind of relatedness. It's actually a way of being that does represent and reflect these values of oneness. If we can step in and embody that and show up and lead, there's no doubt that we can change the world. And about me, I teach online courses for women in how to awaken this new relational power, feminine power. My teaching partner, Catherine Woodward-Thomas, and I have spent 7 years. We've worked with thousands of women in our online courses, and we have a very comprehensive step-by-step program to awaken and develop this kind of relational power to create the things that we yearn for in the future of our world. You can download an audio at femininepower.com, where we have an overview of the 3 core principles and sources of feminine power, and you'll also be able to stay connected with us there. We have a whole global tribe of women that we'd love you to connect with. So femininepower.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. That's beautiful. I'm loving this. Anna Marie, do you want to just give a couple minutes? We're about 4 minutes away from the end of the program, and I'd also like Barbara to chime in toward the end as well. Anna Marie, would you like to do that now?
Yes, thank you, Barbara. Thinking about the value of, what is developing through the whole 12 Spheres initiative and thinking, and how it can be useful going forward, what is being important for humanity's team is that our various projects and ideas speak to and support one another. So we've always had this in and out approach. We also refer to ourselves as a civil rights movement for the soul. Since we know that all change comes from within, we always want to assist one another in our growth process. But on the other hand, we also want to assist those teammates who see themselves or feel themselves drawn to be spiritual activists, to assist them in that way as well. And I can really see that the 12 spheres in this whole Wheel of Co-Creation model is a tool for all of this. Since we are all one, and since the spheres are a reflection of the natural universe and the cosmos, we are all able to see ourselves in each and every one of these spheres. So I really think a great thing is happening. So it's definitely it's a tool for inner work, and it's definitely a tool for spiritual activism, because people can create their own vision for themselves and for their lives through all of this. So I would like to invite everybody to join us on our global Facebook page, where we have regular discussions on oneness in the 12 spheres. We want people to grapple with the idea, because I really believe that this is how we get to know ourselves and how we get to know the world, is to grapple with it, because this is certainly how it's been for humanity's team. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Anna Marie. And, of course, Barbara Marx Hubbard, could you give us
Well, I'm building right on Anna Marie here. I feel we're partnering in this so beautifully, Anna Marie. I'm very proud to say we are opening a new version of evolve.org. And I want to invite everyone to go to evolve.org, and you can do one thing immediately, is share your vision. And we're having a whole section where we would like to have hundreds of thousands of visions, which we can begin to categorize in terms of those sectors of the wheel, those spheres of life, so that the world begins to have a vision. And secondly, we'd like you to become a member of the Conscious Evolution community, because just like Craig and Claire have been so beautifully doing, we are nurturing in ourselves this evolutionary impulse to be evolutionary leaders. And what I have found is that there are literally countless people out there who don't know they're evolutionary leaders until they're invited to say what they want to create, and then suddenly they become animated. So we want a place for people to find each other and to co-create and to enter the wheel of co-creation. And working in partnership with Anna Marie on a global scale, I think, Anna Marie, we can have a picture of the emerging world to change the mind of the world, to see what is actually happening now. This isn't even visionary. It's realistic. And that's why I think we're the new mainstream. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Barbara Marx Hubbard, Anna Marie Pieterse, Craig Hamilton, Claire Zammit. That was absolutely fantastic, and I enjoyed every minute of it. So thank you so much. Next up is the science of interconnection, and that is...
Thank you,
I would say that was appropriate, right?
And I thank Barbara Field for all the work you've done. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Barbara.
Till soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Marie. Bye-bye. Much love, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Much love to you, too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. It's turning into a love fest, and it won't stop here. Next up, we have the Science of Interconnection panel, and that is Greg Braden, Lynn McTaggart, and Bruce Lipton, moderated by Reverend Wendy Craig Purcell, a member of the AG&T Leadership Council. So let's take about 10 seconds of silence to get ready for the next panel. We'll just be in oneness, and then we'll move on. So peace and blessings.